Oh, my computer's a little slow too. Okay, so a little bit about the history of bobcats in Ohio. They were a common pre-European settlement. They were throughout the state, and they were a common predator. They were extirpated or completely eliminated from the state by the mid 1800s, which this is a common scenario for most of the mid to large carnivores in the state or in most Midwestern states. They were extirpated by overhunting, hunting for pelts, and the general fear people had at that time of predators, even small predators like this, that both for their own safety and that they might be taking food away from the pioneers. We didn't have another bobcat sighting till 1946. There was a large male killed near the Ohio River in Scioto County. So nearly 100 years, we don't have any records of bobcats. And we first saw signs of reestablishment in the early 90s. It really didn't take off to the 2000s. So for sightings, there are unverified sightings, which the Bow Hunter Survey is a big is a big source of information on all fur bearers, and reports from the public, whether they're verified or not, they're important. And then there are verified sightings that are sightings by Division of Wildlife employees or have some kind of proof, like a photo of the bobcat or sign, which scat or tracks. Incidentally trapped bobcats during the winter months when the fur trappers are out. They have to report any incidentally trapped bobcats and, of course, their vehicle mortalities. And I know this is very outdated, but it shows generally what I wanted to show you is that the sightings and number of these are verified sightings in the 90s were very, very low. I mean, we just got an inkling of, okay, looks like something's coming, they're coming back. And then by 2005, 2006, we really start seeing an increase up to here. And now this jump is because the division went to an online reporting system. So it's not really comparable to the I'm going to call in and report this, or I'm going to send in pictures and email, because it's a lot easier just to get online and enter it now. So a lot more people do it. I don't know what happened in 2015 or 16. They may have gone back to the manual tracking, but in 2017 it's back up. So that's one of the reasons I haven't carried this on out, because there's not much of a going to be much of a trend yet, and depends on how they're collecting those samples. They need to be collected the same way to see a clear trend. But we do see a clear increasing trend. Like I said, I like to say that 2006 is when I moved to Ohio, and that's when they came back. So anyway, that's just a joke. And we saw a really good increasing trend up to 2014 when they were delisted. So I started my first bobcat project in 2007, and we had hair snares, which were bits of carpet with roofing nails with the ends snipped off of them poking through. We baited them or lured them with beaver castor and catnip, because catnip, like with your house cats, elicits a rubbing reflex. So our hope was that they would all that came to visit would rub and leave behind hair, which would be genetic material, and we'd be able to get an estimate of the population. However, we, through some of the things that I've been reading and through some pilot studies, we found that we weren't really getting the success in hair traps that we wanted to get. So we also used trail cameras or camera traps. This is the one we first used in 2006. It's huge by today's standards. It's funny how quickly they've changed. But we put out these snares, hair snares, either on a post if it was in a field, or on a tree if we were in the woods, would make it more natural. And then we hope to identify some individuals by DNA, and then at least be able to do occupancy modeling, or get an idea of how many areas where the bobcats were versus how many areas the bobcats weren't, which through statistical modeling. And this is what our typical hair snare setup looked like. We had the scent pad, or hair snare is on the tree about knee height or a little lower. Really, yeah, go out. My first few, I put it like up here in the bobcat's head, because I'm thinking in my head the bobcat's bigger than it really is. But when I'm putting them out, I have to make sure that I'm at knee height or below, because they're really not that tall. And then we put two cameras out at 90-degree angles, both to catch both sides of the bobcat as it came in. If it came in straight, which they usually don't, of course, but we couldn't face them because they would blind, each camera would blind the other through the flash. We picked, I think there were, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 12 or 13 or 14 sites. I'm sorry, my memory's a little fuzzy. But we tried to pair a mined site with an unmined site in the same vicinity, because there was some evidence at that time that bobcats preferred abandoned or pre-surface mined areas. And here are some pictures of bobcats doing what they're supposed to. Looking at it, rubbing, and you see the kittens. There's one underneath her and one behind. That's my favorite photo. I have a copy on my desk. Another one, that's a big guy, looks like a male. Another one, he did a lot of rubbing. So results for that part of the study, we did that from 2000, I think that was 2007 to 2009. And the results were that photos were not always or even reliably taken by both cameras. And I can tell you, because we've continued to do camera work, and we're still doing camera work now, not necessarily just on bobcats, but we're more focused on gray foxes, and we are going to do a bobcat telemetry study, and also and for our camera studies, we're also going to focus on river otters. So we still get the cameras out, but we still see that, I don't know if it's angle or the way they approach or whatever, the two cameras don't always catch the animal. So it's almost advantageous just to have two cameras out as a fail safe if you have the inventory for it. And then cameras were by far more effective than the at bobcat detection than the hair snares. Only about 1 in 6 bobcats that visited actually rubbed and left hair behind. Interestingly, gray foxes, which are sometimes seem a little more cat than dog, although they are in the canid family, go crazy over catnip. And when they go crazy, they would leave so much fur behind that I'd have to throw away the pad, because it would be covered. Other species like mountain lions, and especially smaller cats like ocelots, they tend to rub more consistently, but bobcats just don't have that response at the same rate. So we were able to use the cameras, and we were able to determine that with pretty good accuracy that 33% of the available habitat in southeastern Ohio was probably occupied. And then we looked at both historically mined and non-mined sites, and they're both occupied, of course, at the same level. But bobcat numbers were much higher on the previously mined sites. Now, there's not always a direct correlation between how many cats visit a camera and how large the density is. There are some fancy statistics you can work that out with, but we just concluded that density appeared to be greater, and you'll see why. There's more proof for that. Then bobcat occupancy based on surveys strongly correlated with the number of verified sightings. So we were able to take verified sightings and use them to further look at bobcat distribution across Ohio. I think this is 2010. The yellow triangles are the bobcat sites that we surveyed. You can see the ones that aren't covered at all with red dots, which are the verified sightings. They were absent also on the cameras. So, and then other sites like I don't know, if you can't even see it, there's two here, one in the eastern part of the state, one is almost completely covered, and that's like the epicenter for bobcats, and we got most of our pictures there. So we decided to use the verified sightings to determine the range of bobcats in Ohio, and use past and current distribution to verify the pattern of resettlement. Now, I don't have those slides in there, but I can tell you that the eastern and southern population I'm going to talk about, they resettled at the same time, and they simply didn't grow as fast. We were going to determine genetic variability within and among subpopulations, if there were subpopulations, and determine the source of populations in Ohio. So I used a common home range estimator and all the verified sightings to put a home range around this, a kernel home range around it to give us the estimate of the bobcat range in Ohio at that time. Again, that was some time ago. That was 2010. But you can see that there's an eastern cluster and a southern cluster, and then there's a cluster down in Adams County, down the Shawnee. So as an aside, here on the one you're seeing on the left, the green is forest. So you can see that we have more bobcats where there's more forest. And on the left, I don't know what happened to the dots, but the green is the lack of the low human density, which also correlated well with bobcat occurrence. So we looked at potentially 3 subpopulations, and we had genetic samples from each from road-killed bobcats. And the geneticist, Christine Anderson from Capital University, did the genetics work, and we published this paper on this. So in a nutshell, the southern and the middle population were not different, but they both differed from the eastern population. So that gave us subpopulations that were actually genetically distinct. And there's nothing in between those populations. If you're familiar with the area, there's no highway, there's no river, there's really nothing, no big cities. In fact, I-77 goes right through the middle of that really dense eastern population. And we did get roadkills on 77, not as many as you would think, but It did not seem to deter them crossing or them prospering in that area. We also had sightings of them swimming the Ohio River, so we know they crossed that way. We had one guy call, we had one on a barge. We had to go down and get it off. I guess it got tired of swimming. So we had these two subpopulations. Now, we have, we got bobcats from West Virginia, Western and Eastern Kentucky, Southwestern and Northeastern Pennsylvania. So pretty much all the states to our eastern border and the southern border, we contributed to our bobcat populations. An interesting thing here, if you see the eastern population symbol on top in blue, the percent res is 89 or almost 90%. That's the percent residents and not immigrants in the population. So it was a stable population and self-reproducing and self-sustaining. Now the southern Ohio population, the number of residents, the percent residents was only 43%. So it was not a stable population. They were getting 14% in from Eastern Ohio and 43% still were coming in from other states. Now remember, this is 2010, but at that time, if we could have magically cut off that immigration from outside the state and Eastern Ohio, that southern population would have probably died out because there wasn't enough there to sustain itself. Now, by now, we know that the bobcats have reproduced. The southern population is much larger, and they're probably merged into one continuous genetic population. But it was interesting to see how the habitat and how land use contributed to the re-establishment of bobcats in the early stages. So Eastern Ohio may be acting as a stable source, while Southern Ohio may be acting as a smaller sink population. The distribution of bobcats was unequal, so the Division of Wildlife proposed 2 management units, and I believe they're still using those. And there's no barrier between the 2 subpopulations, so we did not expect for that segregation of the subpopulations to last, as long as there was no big disturbance or decrease in population size. So next phase of the research was the real fun part for me. It started in 2011, and we initiated a project to try to discover the reasons why the eastern population was so much larger and more productive. Now I told you they both started from a single site in a single time in the 80s. We had one like, or maybe it was the early 90s. We had like 1 or 2 verified sightings in the eastern population and 1 or 2 in the southern population and 1 and 2 down in Shawnee. And then the growth was just phenomenally different. I was going to show you, these were our focal points in our study sites, the yellow triangles, Noble County and Benton County for eastern and southern respectively. And so that's our setup for traps. We tried a lot of traps. We ended up using foothold traps, which we very much didn't. We tried for a long time to get them to go in cages, and they just would not, no matter what we did. But we used traps that were large, were laminated, which seems they're smooth, and they had offset jaws. And offset jaws means they didn't close all the way. Now, they also have traps out there with padded jaws, but what happens with the padded jaws is the padding isn't really as soft as it sounds. It's very hard padding. And in the winter it freezes. And it actually, that's the first trap we started with. And it actually cut into the pad of the first bobcat we caught. And we got rid of those and we moved on to the MB550s, which are a good trap. And now bobcats are like all cats. They have a desire to go where they somewhere different. And then, so a lot of animals, when you're trapping them, you want to hide the trap. For bobcat, you want to lead them to it, but make it obvious. And that square there with the twigs, the trap is in the middle of it. You know, it's like you put a piece of paper on the floor and your house cat goes to sit in the middle of it. So it's just kind of the same. So our objectives were to determine density, movement patterns, home range size, habitat use, survival, and reproduction if we could, between the eastern and southern populations. So these are just some pictures of what we did. We trapped bobcats, anesthetized them. We took blood to check for common felid diseases that are in house cats, and we didn't find any diseases. There were no seropositive cats, which is a nice indicator that they are not interacting with house cats as competitors or as prey or for any reason. We weighed them, took standard measurements, and then radio collared them with a GPS radio collar that took a location twice a day. Now, at that time, the collars on bobcats, there's a general rule of thumb that the collars have to be 3 to 5% of the body weight and no more for them not to impact the animal negatively. So, and we were always conservative and went to the 3% body weight measure. So we couldn't get collars that small that would be that would send you the location straight to your email. Like, it's really cool. These ones were called store on board, but we also were able to use a UHF signal, a VHF signal to find the cats. The collars beeped like most collars do, and a UHF signal once we found them to carry the data back to a special receiver we had. But the snag was you had to be 40 meters or 400 meters. Well, it doesn't really matter, but it had to be line of sight. And you guys got to know that not much is line of sight in southeastern Ohio. So we ended up radio collaring 24 bobcats with GPS collars, and they were downloadable, and 4 additional bobcats with VHF. Those are the collars that just beep, 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 and you go out with an antenna, this good old-fashioned way of finding radio collared animals. And like I did all the animals for my master's when we didn't have fun things like GPS collars. The 4 additional ones were males that we caught because we were saving the last collars for females because we wanted equal numbers. So we solved the line of sight problem by attaching the antennas to a helicopter, flying out with a VHF, finding the cats, and then hovering as low as we could without disturbing them, and then downloading their collars over the UHF. So that was really cool and a lot of fun. So we did verify that there was a higher density in the eastern and the southern population. Body condition indices, which is essentially the weight divided by the length of the animal. So it gives you an idea of how big it is, how healthy it is, how much fat it has. They were actually, even though there are more animals in the eastern population, they were heavier and in better condition than the southern animals. And on top of that, usually when you have a higher density, you have yeah, I'm not getting that right. Anyway, so the home range and core area estimates were smaller for the eastern bobcats, even though they had high densities. And so essentially what that says is they were getting more of what they needed in a smaller area than the southern bobcats were. Dispersal from each area was pretty much the same. And it says annual survival was initially in some years was lower in the eastern population than the southern population. But that over the 3 years that we did the study, that evened out. And now this screen just shows the southern population locations for bobcats on your left. Yeah, your left, I think. And the eastern population bobcat locations on your right. And so they're the same scale. So you can see the difference of how compact and how small those home ranges are. They're just all those locations are piled on top of each other. Versus how large, and you can kind of ignore the yellow one. He was dispersing and coming back and dispersing and coming back. He couldn't make up his mind. Finally settled in Washington County in the Wayne. But they're very much more dispersed and larger in the southern population. So they need to cover more territory to get the food that they need or the resources they need. In fact, there's one, I don't know if how well you can tell, but there's a red one. The red dots go down into the blue and orange dots and then go back all the way up to the top up by themselves. They covered all of Benton Furnace and almost all of Zaleski. So that was a really, really big range. So reproduction-based uterine scars of roadkills showed that fetus counts were greater in the eastern area. So we're getting higher reproduction from healthier cats in a smaller area. And we also saw that there's some kind of important interaction going on between landscape features, especially former surface mine areas, and bobcat recovery. So the results showed that or suggested that there's a more concentrated food base in the eastern population, and possibly in combination with that exploited landscape for reclaimed mines and gas main areas where they maintain a grassy area and where there's a higher density of voles. And there have been papers published that vole populations, which are pretty much look like mice on steroids, so they're bigger and meatier, and that they occur more in areas that have been areas where there's oil wells and areas that have been surface mined and reclaimed. Just a summary of all that of 7 years work. And back to pre-settlement times, they were common pre-settlement statewide, extirpated in the mid-1800s, returned about 100 years later along the in Scioto County. They were officially protected when they were one of the first officially protected species with the initiation of the Endangered Species Act in Ohio in 1974, which was also the year the Federal Endangered Species Act came out. The climbing populations occurred early in the 2000s and then took off really around 2005 or 6. Their status was reduced to threatened in 2011, and they were delisted in 2014, which their numbers are growing, which is fantastic. People see them around here all the time. People see them in Western Ohio, in areas where there might be just a small patch of forest. I think anywhere there's even a small patch of forest, 10, 20 acres, we might see bobcats using patches in the larger landscape in Western Ohio. So they're really doing great. And the downside of them really doing great are depredation issues. They are predators, so, and they're cats, which means they're obligatory predators, and that means that they have to eat meat. They can't eat anything else. You know, coyotes and foxes, they can eat whatever fruit is abundant, pawpaws or possum or persimmons. I almost called them possum apples, persimmons. You know, whatever's available, they can eat it. They're opportunistic, and they're omnivorous. Cats are the only truly obligate carnivore that I'm aware of on land anyway. So much so that they actually have an extra essential amino acid that has to be in their diet, but it's in meat, so they've evolved not to, their bodies don't produce it. Their digestive systems are shortened because they just eat meat. They really can't even digest vegetable matter, which I always kind of laugh at cat food commercials where like, give your cats, you know, a variety of greens and orange. Yeah, they don't want that. And the other problem is with well, anyway, with depredation issues, the only major depredation issue is our fowl. Chickens mostly. We had a big issue when I was at the division, when a couple of very expensive peacocks got eaten. And but you know, what I say is, you know, you got to put your chickens up at night. If you don't, I mean, everything eats chickens. Everything eats chickens. Foxes eat chickens. Raccoons eat chickens. Probably possums can even catch good chickens. The other thing is that orphans, and we had a few of those, and there aren't many rehabbers in the state that are equipped or qualified to handle bobcats as orphans, because they need to be, they can't be allowed to become accustomed to people. So they need to be pretty much walled off and fed through blind chutes and taught how to hunt and things like that. So there's a place up in northeastern Ohio that built a containment for 2 bobcat kittens and they raised and released them successfully. And one or both of them had established home ranges in the wild, because I put radio collars on them, and actually had their own kittens. So we know that they can be successfully raised and released. Oh, here's just a few more closing pictures. Things we get the most is deer, all kinds of deer. I don't know why deer like beaver castor, but they'll smell anything. Rabbits. And what you don't want is a happy rabbit in front of your camera, or you'll get 3,000 rabbit pictures. Possums. Possums are so funny because they do these 2 really unique things. One is they self-anoint when they find something that's smelly, like beaver castor. They get it on their hands and then they rub it on their fur and on their legs, and like they're a cat cleaning themselves, but they're really trying to rub that scent on themselves. The other thing they do is they're kind of obsessive compulsive. So they would get the carpet started to fray on the edge, they'd get that, and then they would just pull it down. And I would come up to the site and there'd be a little pile of carpet or fibers on the ground. So they're pretty cool animals. I know a lot of people don't like possums, but I think they're very successful. And gangs of raccoons. For a long time in science, we thought that raccoons were not social. The loners, they are not loners. They have a very elaborate social system. I did my postdoc on that. And if you look to the left, there's a long-tailed weasel. And so that's it. We are a nonprofit organization, so donations are always, this is my pitch for donations, and I hate to do it, but yeah, donations are always appreciated, and every bit of the money goes back into wildlife research. So you can like us on Facebook and check us out on the internet. I haven't updated the website forever, but it's still current with what we're doing. And remember to put wildlife so you don't get the Australian Wine Association.
So, what is beaver caster?
Oh, here we go. That's a better picture.
Oh,
That's a happy cat on what we called kitty magic, which was a mixture of the drugs that we gave them. Purring and growling at the same time. Beaver caster is something that beavers make in the glands near their tail, and they use it to mark their territory. And it's actually in pioneer days, and I don't know, maybe even still, was actually used as a component of ladies' perfumes.
no.
I know. I just think pioneer ladies it really must have smelled bad. But anyway, it's used as just a all-purpose call lure. The cats like it a lot. I found better ones for the bobcat. I mean, for the foxes, but yeah, they like. So when trappers trap beavers, either when they trap them as nuisance animals or when they trap them for fur, they also collect the caster because they can sell that for a good profit.
Do anybody else have any questions? Yo.
I did notice that you did have that little spot over in western Ohio. Is that the Fernald Preserve point?
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
caught them on
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're doing very well there. I've followed their progress, and that's what makes me think that they're going to do quite well in Western Ohio, wherever there's enough forest. They do need forest, but I think they'll be able to use, if we get enough bobcats, they'll be able to use kind of like the meta landscape. So they might be able to use different patches of forest that are close together and move around in between them, even if they're not large enough for home range on their own. So I think we're gonna have them behind every tree. I hope so anyway. My friend is doing a bobcat study in Tucson, Arizona, and interestingly there, they go into cage traps like super easy. And so, and B, there are some of them that live exclusively in the suburbs. They actually have their young on people's roofs.
That'd be wild.
I know, and they hang out in their yards. They get over the out west. Well, I used to live in Phoenix, and they have these really high walls behind their houses. And I don't know if that's so people can't look in, or they don't want coyotes coming in, but coyotes can still jump it. But anyway, they have these high walls, and bobcats will get into a yard with a high wall and have their kittens right there in the yard and stay there. So they have raised so much money and done such good. They're doing a lot of citizen science out there, and we're going to try something. We're going to try some similar trapping out in Washington County this winter or spring. So I'm excited.
Cool. Okay.
Do you know how many individuals that they have accounted for in the Fernald Preserve area?
I don't. I'm out of the loop. I haven't kept up with that like I should have, but I do know they probably had a decent reproducing population. So I'm sure they're They might even be at capacity and have some dispersers now. But that was one of the first places in Western Ohio I got proof that they were at.
Cool.
Pretty.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, can you give us like the average height of a bobcat and maybe the average weight?
Yeah, I would
Uh-huh.
say at the shoulder, they're probably the smaller ones are maybe about 15 inches, not very tall. A larger bobcat, a big male, might be more closer to 18, but I wouldn't put them, I probably wouldn't put them above that, definitely not. Then I'm thinking at the shoulder, but they're really not as large as you would think. The females were 18 to 22 pounds. A large female would be in the mid to upper 20s, a very large female, or very fat or very pregnant female. Now I've got a house cat in the other room that's pushing 16 right now. But the males were more likely to be they're larger. They would be in the upper 20s in most places. In Eastern Ohio, they got larger still, and we got a couple of record ones at 30 and 31 pounds. So that's the largest we get here. It varies across the range. I think in Wisconsin, the largest one ever killed was 50 pounds.
Wow.
No, coyotes also vary a lot. I used to work on a coyote project in Chicago, and our coyotes were pretty big. They were 40 to 50 pounds. And I got here and caught a coyote, and I'm like, you call that a coyote? What? It's 30 pounds. Anybody else?
What is their range of litter size?
I'm sorry.
What's the litter size?
Oh, usually two to three. 2 to 3. They don't have large litters.
Do we have any idea who travels more, males or females?
Oh yeah, males much
Males.
more. Yeah, males probably they might be almost double the size of females. There's this idiom in carnivore biology and maybe in other species that female home range is controlled by the habitat they need to raise their kittens. And male home range is controlled by the females.
Right.
So and female home ranges don't typically overlap here. They overlap in other parts of the country, but they don't overlap much here. So if a male wants to mate with more than one female, then he's going to have to cover more than one.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's going to have to cover multiple home ranges.
Right. Okay. I know I have one more. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do.
You do? Okay, hang on. One.
Yeah.
We'll go back and forth. Do we know why they have a bobbed tail and why they don't have a longer tail like other cats?
No, that's a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me what evolutionarily how they lost their tail.
Yeah.
I would say if I had to guess, and that'd be pure guess, right off the top of my head, I would say it would be moving through brush and thorny, brushy areas, and not to get tangled. And plus, they don't climb trees that much, so you don't really need a counterbalance, which most cats with long tails are more arboreal than bobcats. Bobcats are more, they're. I can't say that I ever saw one hanging out in a tree when I located it during the day. So
Okay.
that might be the bigger reason, because other cats like ocelots, they have long tails and they live in some pretty brushy areas in southern South America. But I think because they're not as arboreal, they probably lost that. So why have a long tail to keep out of the,
Right.
out of the briars if you're not going to use it as a counterbalance? Probably just you got evolved out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah. So I was wondering what competes with the bobcats for food, and then also do the males and females, will they stick together kind of for life? Like, will the males help the females? Will they raise their litter together?
Would do the, okay, first, I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Who competes for food?
Like compete,
Oh, okay.
like fox and maybe birds of prey, like hawks, are going after the voles and little critters.
Yep, I think you're right. Anything that's omnivorous that eats any has a meat in its diet for any reason is going to compete with bobcats to some extent. But I think the only one that would really, put a dent in their prey would be coyotes. But the other thing about coyotes is they eat whatever is easiest to get because they're very opportunistic. So if, when there's lots of voles or lots of mice, that's what they're going to eat. When there's lots of fruit, then that's what they're going to eat. So, and I've also seen some videos of a bobcat on a dead deer, which was I don't think he killed the deer, but he definitely found it. He slept on it, he laid on it, he kept the whole coyote pack away from it until he was done for like days. So they definitely compete and come out on top, I think, most of the time. And we only had one bobcat killed by a canid, and he was very, very old. He hardly had any teeth left. So, and then what was the other part of your question?
Oh, this male and female stick together for life, and do they raise their litter together?
Oh, no. Males have no part in taking care of the kittens.
Okay.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. That's the way it is with a lot of carnivores. It's a female only occupation. In fact, they have to protect their litters from males because other males will come in the area. If they come in the area, might actually even kill the kittens. But females do a good job of protecting them.
Thank you.
Another little interesting thing about bobcat females is that if they did by some reason lose their litter at any time during the year, they mostly reproduce in the spring, mostly in most of them have their litters in April or early May. But if they lose their litter for any reason, they will go right back into estrus, mate again. Males are always ready to mate, and they will mate again, and they will have another litter. And if they lose that litter, they'll mate again. So they are doing a lot of research with the Iberian lynx because they're in the same genus, and they only mate once, and if they lose their litter, it's just that year's gone as far as reproduction, and they're very, very highly endangered. And so there's research going on about trying to determine why and what it is about bobcat physiology that allows them to re-enter estrus every time kittens are lost.
You spoke about mine sites. Do you mean mineral extraction sites? Can you elaborate?
Coal mines.
Oh my.
Mhm. And why is that suitable habitat?
Well, not so much the active coal mines, but the reclaimed mines, especially those reclaimed before the reclamation laws, which is kind of strange because the reclamation laws were there to make reclamation better and more consistent, which I know it made it more consistent, but they also allow the coal producer to plant any grass species, even if it's an exotic, and to cover the area, just to hold the soil. But and some of these areas they're going to have a hard time getting back to their climax community or back onto a native regime. But those older sites like that are predominant in the eastern counties. Noble County, where their bobcats are most were at the time most abundant, was one of the most highly surface mined areas in the state. And a lot of old mines, and they just go back to seed. They have grass, they have small trees, they just are really good hunting environment. Also, there's the oil wells, which I know the area around oil wells where the oil company keeps them bare, keeps them in grass, tall grass to access the oil wells and check on them. There's so many more of them in the eastern part of the state, which I think those really play a bigger part of it than the coal mines do, because I did small mammal trapping as part of this study, and I was just trapping in the eastern counties, and I'm like, where are the voles? We'd already done a diet study. I'm like, where are the voles? And so I was doing these long straight transects like we're taught to do in school, and I just saw all these oil wells and these little circles of grass, and I thought, I'm gonna try in there. I'm gonna make a round transect. I don't care if it's unconventional. And I just got vole after vole after vole. I'm calling my husband saying, I found the voles. And he's like, you're crazy. Okay. But anyway, and there are papers published that, like I said, that document vole availability is higher in those areas. And voles are bigger, meatier, and more substantial than mice are.
Anybody else? Kristen?
I certainly don't advocate surface mining to make better bobcat habitat. I'm not trying to say that. That's just how they came in and where they first flourished, but they're doing well everywhere now. So it gave them a toehold.
So where did the bobcats start from to get to Ohio?
They came from all the states around us. We genetically tested some of our bobcats, and we got hits that put them from Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and West Virginia. I would say probably most of the ones in the southern part of the state came from West Virginia, and maybe the eastern part too.
So the ones on the west side in Fernald came from where?
They may have come up from Kentucky, or they may have just come over from the southern population. There's a really good population in Shawnee and Adams County, and I don't think that's too far away from you guys. So I'm not sure.
Not too far away. Couple freeways, but you know,
It's what?
there's a couple of freeways in between.
Well, not in the 1900s.
But
Well,
the
yeah.
bobcats just showed up in Fernald not that long ago.
I don't know when. I
Yeah,
don't know
well,
when
they
showed
like I
up.
said, I-77 goes right through their big cluster, their main point of abundance in Ohio, and they cross it, and they still do well. So they can cross highways. They actually do look before they go.
I mean,
I actually think they too look for cars. They're smart animals.
They are.
Yeah, we do. We go roadkills, but that's the main mortality right now, and it's about 10% a year.
Excuse me, do you know why they liked the beaver caster? Do they hunt something that big? Or
No, I wouldn't suspect them to hunt, especially not a full-grown beaver, maybe young beavers, but animals, all mammals have a really, especially the predators have a really enhanced sense of smell, and pretty much you put up anything stinky and new and they're going to come look at it. They're like, hey, something smells new, and I'm going to come smell it. I mean, I can put out coyote urine and I'll get rabbits. I don't know why. How does that make any sense? How does that make any sense? Except they're like, hey, there's something new. I'm gonna go smell it. And maybe they're thinking, I'm not gonna come here again, but I don't know. But I mean, it's just, I've gotten the strangest things on the lure. It's just, I get everything. Like I said, deer is the thing I get most. And certainly they have no link to beavers or catnip.
Yeah, but beavers are in the rodent families. That's kind of what I was thinking. Maybe it smelled just kind of rodenty, like
Yeah.
a rat or a vole or a mole or, a mouse, like any
It
of those
probably
things.
does. It probably does. But a lot stronger. You're right.
Sure, sure.
Mice
Yeah.
and voles, I don't smell good.
I'm not the expert. I don't know, but that's
I
just what I was
use
thinking.
these enclosed live traps when I live trapped for small mammals, and I could pick it up and tell you by the smell if it was a mouse or a vole. And it's just crazy. All animals smell different.
Yeah.
If you're around them enough, you notice.
Anybody else? Yeah.
What would be on your short list of recommendations to help their recovery?
I would say to definitely, no matter what the DNR does, I would say they need to continue to protect all the eastern population, wherever they're at, Fernaldi or wherever else they might be. And I think the southern population, although it's grown, I think that still should be protected for a while. And they are moving up now into northeastern Ohio. So I mean, there are still areas where they're growing and they're expanding, and those areas need to be protected. Another thing we found out, which was interesting, in our southern population, we were able to document natal dens where the kittens were born, and they were almost always born in now it's going to sound like I'm advocating clear cutting, but I'm not. But they were almost always born in big slash piles of wood and wood debris, and these things were huge. You couldn't even find where the cat had gone in. You knew that she was in there, but so actually, if you could make medium-sized piles of logs and twigs and like a slash pile on your property, you may get bobcats breeding there.
Are there any dangers of having bobcats near your home? Like, do they attack your pets? Do they attack your children?
I haven't heard of, they're not going to attack your children unless
Okay.
unless something's wrong with them, with not your children, the cats, the kittens. A lot of times when animals are sick, not necessarily rabid, but just sick for any reason,
Right.
they act strange. Like I had a raccoon that had distemper follow me out to the car to the parking lot. I'm like, okay, go away now. But I haven't seen any evidence of them predating on cats, but if they were desperate, they would. And small dogs, if they were desperate, they would. But by far the larger hazard comes from pets comes from coyotes, and there are way many more coyotes than there are bobcats. So I would worry more about coyotes, seriously.
Oh no, we had like overnight, I think like 4 neighborhood cats on our street were eaten. I mean, it was like,
I know,
okay.
right? Bobcats,
Sure.
I mean, coyotes actually like cats.
Mhm.
They will
Tasty.
they will
Jerks.
they will go after them. And
Yep.
small dogs and any size dog, really, unless they can't beat it, is viewed as competition. And there's a lot of competition among canids based on size, and like wolves kill or displace coyotes, and coyotes kill or displace foxes. So it's just natural that, or maybe not in a good way, but it follows that coyotes see dogs also as a fox-like competition. So that sometimes they just kill them, but they don't eat them, but they actually eat the cats.
Does anything prey on the bobcats?
Not so much here. Kittens can be preyed on by large raptors, coyotes, male bobcats. But mother kind of keeps them pretty close and doesn't take them out with her until they're pretty big. So an adult bobcat, the only thing in those 4 years I had kill them was one canid attack and cars. At other places where there are mountain lions and wolves, then you get more depredation on bobcats. But we don't have that yet.
Anybody else? Oh my goodness, how about a round of applause? Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. It's like,
Okay.
it actually started snowing here. Well,
Yeah,
not
it's snowing
bad.
here too. Yeah, it's
And-
crap weather. It is, but
And my car keeps breaking down. Now it's the starter.
yeah.
You know, I told them it was a starter when I took it because I know a little bit about cars, and they're like, well, we'll just wait till it doesn't start. And I'm like, waited like 2 weeks, and they're calling me up and they're like, hey, guess what? It didn't start. We think it's a starter. I'm like, no kidding.
It's okay. You can say no shit. It's okay. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that this worked. Yay!
I'm so glad it worked too. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And if you want it sometime to hear about foxes next year, let me know because we'll
This
be
is awesome.
getting some results on our gray fox population, which is in bad shape.
And maybe in the spring or something when it's not crappy weather.
Yes, I'd love to make a drive. I love you're in Cincinnati, right?
I am.
Yeah, I love Cincinnati. My husband used to live there, well, pre us, but yeah, I
Yeah,
love
some
Cincinnati.
Skyline chili and, you know,
I
teach us
know.
about foxes.
Skyline chili. That's the reason to go.
Right. I know. Yeah, just let me know what month you want to come down. I'm just starting to fill in for next year. So, I mean, if you
Okay.
have a month that would be convenient for you, come on down.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for having me. You guys were a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
the questions.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.